violence at home and the violence in our communities is a reflection of the violence in the world, the violence that we commit against entire countries, like the country of Iraq, which we're now honoring the 20th anniversary of shock and awe in Baghdad, March 20th. 2003. So Wayne Cook, thanks again for joining us on the Monday afternoon show. You've been great to send some audio, particularly from this anti-war rally, from the Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, D.C.
Kieran and I are putting together a little show called Peace Dividend. And we're going to look at the policies and profiteers of perpetual war. And so, to me, Tulsi Gabbard is an exciting anti-war candidate, even though she is a veteran and a U.S. representative. But she came out from the very beginning in 2020 when she ran for president with statements opposing what she called regime change wars, which many of us call perpetual war. Part of the goal, to me, of talking about peace dividends is what is the value and purpose of perpetual war? Well, it allows us to commit wars against the poorest people on the planet. When we invaded Afghanistan, they were the second poorest country in the world. And to keep these wars going in a kind of corporate socialism within the military budget and allow what Assange calls the international security elite, we'll just say the very wealthy, to plunder both the European and U.S. tax bases. So that's what goes on in the secret military budget. It's simply a form of corporate socialism. Tulsi Gabbard, the indigenous former representative of Hawaii, is an anti-war candidate and is of interest to both Kieran and I. And Kieran took a little different, he didn't know quite as much about her, and I thought it would be beneficial to let her speak in her own words. Tulsi's response, the response of most people who understand why the military budget is currently 2/3 of the U.S. budget, is to hack that in half. There are policies and actions that should be taken. The first is to reduce our bases and to reduce this machine for perpetuating war. It doesn't win wars. It doesn't need to have any positive product. The bombs don't even need to be used. It's just a way to funnel money to a very, very few people. So Tulsi Gabbard figured all this out on her own in Iraq on the ground. How she got into the military, her very, very early engagement with Hawaiian, protecting the Hawaiian environment, because she's indigenous, she's Samoan. And then how her experience in Iraq as a medic, she wasn't a soldier shooting people, she was a medic saving people. And how not only the injuries of war, but also behind the scenes, how people were exploited financially, sexually, and by race, gave her a very different view of the war machine.
You have criticized Hillary Clinton as the, quote, personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party. What is the rot you see in the Democratic Party?
That our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests. I'm running for president to be the Democratic nominee that rebuilds our Democratic Party, takes it out of their hands, and truly puts it in the hands of the people of this country, a party that actually hears the voices of Americans who are struggling all across this country, and puts it in the hands of veterans and fellow Americans who are calling for an end to this ongoing Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy doctrine of regime change wars, overthrowing dictators in other countries, needlessly sending my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way to fight in wars that actually undermine our national security and have cost us thousands of American lives. These are wars that have cost us as American taxpayers trillions of dollars since 9/11 alone, dollars that have come out of our pockets, out of our hospitals, out of our schools, out of our infrastructure needs. As president, I will end this foreign policy, end these regime change wars wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and instead invest our hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually into serving the needs of the American people
Thank you,
right here at
Congresswoman.
home.
Senator Harris, any response?
Oh, sure. I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent
Senator Harris. That's
who has spent
ridiculous.
full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to
What
respond.
Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to briefly give Senator Harris a final second to respond.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to all people. I spent my entire career standing mostly in a courtroom speaking 5 words, Kamala Harris for the people. And it was about all the people, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks. We need someone on this debate stage in November who has the ability to unify the country and to win the election. And I believe, again, I am that candidate.
So what I
remember those days, the old Hillary days, when they stabbed Bernie in the back. That's right, I remember that.
Well, they did the same to Tulsi Gabbard. She was just less of a big name. She wasn't a senator. She was a representative. But the second she came out against the war machine, in other words, against primarily the corporate socialism and the military budget, the second she articulated that, she was blackballed by the Democrats. She now has to run as an independent. So she was taken off the debate list. Kamala Harris dropped out after a very brief. You have a copy of it, but we don't need to play it. But a very brief exchange where Tulsi Gabbard went through her record, as a prosecutor, incarcerating 1,500 people for smoking pot, laughing when she was asked whether she smoked pot. So, there's a tremendous difference in the two approaches. Tulsi was talking about substance and a specific policy agenda and why she was behind it. Kamala was very expertly going back to, I can win. I'm the person who can win. That was the substance of her statement. And then what did she do? She did exactly as Tulsi predicted. She perpetuated war. She took anti-immigrant stance down to Guatemala and said, do not come, famously. So Tulsi was dead right.
So we'll see where this goes. It's very curious to me that the Democrats in shambles just seem to be clinging on to their corporate establishment Democratic hopefuls for the next round. And I don't even know if Joe Biden's going to make it to the next round before he croaks. And I don't even know if Kamala Harris, where she is or what she's doing. She's kind of been gag ordered or something for.
Yeah, she's been put in Guantanamo. She disappeared.
So what's going on here? So I'm just wondering, what are the Democrats going to do? Probably the same old, which is be terrible, which means we're probably going to get you-know-who again as president as a very real possibility. People say I'm nuts for even suggesting that that's even a remote possibility because he could end up in jail, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, it's definitely more than just a remote possibility that this man could be elected president once again, because look who he's running against.
I think the attractive corporate fascist candidate, Mr. Santos, is very attractive. He speaks the language. He's clearly, by his policies, sexist, racist. He's virulently anti-abortion, wants to punish abortion providers, doesn't want anyone to have any non-white male corporate public education. You're not allowed to question, the narrative.
You're talking about Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida.
Correct.
I was talking about you-know-who with the orange hair.
I know, but I think that the man with the orange hair had to struggle against corporate interest, orange skin, yellow hair. Had to
whatever the hell he is, the crazy New York City wannabe billionaire, corporate liar,
But you know what,
person.
while I agree,
the hero of the South somehow.
He as Noam Chomsky said, he adroitly played the race card in the South and the abortion card in the North. So he gets the Northern Catholics and he gets the Southern, race-scared people, and he brought in the vote and, became president. It was.
And despite the grab him in the pussy audio, he got the conservative Christian woman's vote.
I don't.
You gotta love that. Come on, you gotta just.
I don't know. I don't. Well, that's the thing. The conservative Christian women. This is a constituency that's. Are we talking about the wives of highly conservative, sexist men who buy into a patriarchal Christianity? I mean, it's funny you bring that up because I was at church once, and the pastor was trying to get people to talk in positive ways, and she says, what does the cross represent to you? It was a little group, and various people were resurrection and hope and nonviolence, and this little 4-year-old girl said murder, and I raised my hands and I said state murder, and for the first time in a long, I'd always felt like American churches are tax exempt because they support the corporate state. They support the military industrial complex. They do not talk about nonviolence. They do not talk, except negatively, about socialism and non-consumer lifestyle. Christ had the exact opposite of capitalism. They do not. There's nonviolence. They don't talk about turning the other cheek, or if they ask for your coat, give them your shirt. They've exempted anything that would, to me, most of the primary attractive planks of Christianity are omitted from American churches, but they put up this symbol of state murder. and what can that symbol mean to a poor person like me? It has to mean a kind of a impending threat that you're not.
That's a good take on the cross right there. There's also another question of churches that fly the American flag above the altar. So you have this sort of deification of the state, deification of these figures of like Jefferson and Washington. And I just want to say, to honor this 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, the U.S. imperial project of might makes right, shock and awe around the globe, has not seemed to let up one bit. And I don't think anyone within the Democratic establishment, anyone with even a remote affiliation or fealty to the military-industrial complex is going to offer us any kind of solution that's going to get us out of this.
No, because we have to go back.
Einstein said it's the type of thinking that went into creating a problem will never get us out of it. The same type of thinking will never get us out.
But it's not a problem for the international security elite that pay attorneys to write laws, that pay for the campaigns of both parties to enact those laws so that they do not have to pay taxes. They can have a tax boycott for the rich. All you have to do is look at what Assange has this like 2-minute video that someone sent me where he said, this was 2011, I think it was the 10-year anniversary of the Afghan war. And he said, here we are, in the U.S. and Europe invaded Afghanistan, the second poorest country on earth. And, clearly we had the military might to subdue them within a year. And it's been 10 years and there's no end to the war. He said...
Sorry, 22 years. No, sorry, 21 and a half years.
Today. Right, today. But he said the point then is obviously not to win a war, but to perpetuate the war. And why would you do that? Why would you celebrate generals who fail to win the war? Why would you keep hiring corporations to build bombs and send in contractors and do all this stuff because the purpose is to occupy so that you can, as he said, loot the taxpayer bases of Europe and the United States. And that process will reach a fulmination. Perhaps it is now because the banks are beginning to fail again.
That's something we haven't even talked about that yet.
Right.
So, maybe next week we can do a little bit of a specialty on, Credit Suisse. Are they running out of the Nazi gold that they had? I don't know what's going on over there. But, the banking industry, that's a whole nother thing. But
it's part of the, military-industrial complex. One of the speakers at Rage Against the War in Washington, D.C., there was recently, I think, this last weekend, another anti-war rally under a different name. And I just wanted to say that Americans don't hear about it, but in Europe, there are major rallies with from 20 to 50,000 people raging against the war in Germany, also large rallies in London, and of course, these rallies against the looting of Social Security by Macron in France. So if you're thinking anti-war, if you're thinking that, government is corrupt, you need, I would say look behind the government and not at the figureheads, be it Trump or Biden. Look behind and ask yourself, why are we voting for people who are figureheads for kind of the enemy?
Right. This is all good.
You don't, you're smarter than me. You don't vote for those people ever. I can be seduced, and I'm ashamed to admit I voted for the monster Biden, who to me is far worse than Trump. He's completely a warmongering. He's just terrible. People.
But you have an optimism and faith in the system.
No,
that if
I don't.
Right, that there is a chance that maybe it could work.
What I hear from Democrats, because they're the people I know mostly, is, you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. And I said, so you're conceding that every time we vote for evil, and so I just, at some point you have to get rational and go, am I going to vote for evil every single time? And my answer is no. I think I can be adult enough to go, no, I'm not going to press a button for evil.
Okay. Well, on that note,
On that
I
note.
think we should go to a Hayes Carl song.
Cool.
This is more about Afghanistan, but it is directly related to the war in Iraq as well. Thanks again, Wayne.
Thank you.
On in the Monday afternoon show.
See you soon. Goodbye for Peace Dividend.